on the start of our program. So I will begin with just some basic information, folks, and we'll introduce our speakers today, Brooke and Dale, and we are very excited to have you join us, so thank you so much for being here. All right, so I'm going to take control of the slides. So today's session is all about informational interviews, the first step to networking for the career that you want. And we have two amazing career advisors and speakers today to share that information with you. So before we get into the deeper information here in the program, just want to share some really important announcements before we begin. So you can turn on captions for this session by selecting the More button at the top of your Teams screen and selecting Turn on Live Captions from the drop-down menu. As I had said earlier, your microphone will remain muted for the entire session just to reduce background noise. However, the chat is available throughout the session, and we encourage you to share questions as they come up, thoughts and reflections in the chat. We do ask that you be kind and refrain from using any inappropriate language or sharing any offensive content. We're all here to learn, and we want to engage with our community, and we do appreciate your cooperation. Please do not photograph, screenshot, or record anyone in attendance. This session is being recorded, and there is no obligation to have your camera on or to use the chat to participate in the session. Presentation slides may contain clickable links. For those viewing this presentation from a mobile device, we'll include the links in the chat as well so that you can retrieve them at the end without being taken out of the session. You will see that Teams does offer some helpful presentation options like changing the slides and be able to move through at your own pace. If you move the slides and wish to get back to the slide currently being discussed, please select the red box beneath the slide that says Sync to Presenter. This will not impact anyone else's viewing experience and will get you right back to the current slide. All right, so just last housekeeping slide coming up here for details. Just want to talk a little bit about SNHU's access and accommodation info, which serves as a reminder of resources available to all of our community members. So your experience at SNHU is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate department. For our online students joining us today, please contact the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or calling 866-305-9430. For our campus students joining us today, please contact the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by calling 603-644-3118. And for our staff and faculty, please contact the Human Resources Offices by email hr@snhu.edu. And now the favorite part for me as the MC, I'd like to introduce our two amazing presenters today. So first up, we have Brooke Brigham. Brooke started as a career engagement partner at Southern New Hampshire University in May of 2022. She primarily collaborates with university stakeholders in social sciences, health professions, and nursing. Most recently, Brooke held the Director of Career and Leadership Development at a small private institution in Worcester, Mass. She has also served in student affairs positions relating to student success and academic advising for the past 8 years. Brooke holds an MBA and an undergraduate degree in business administration with a minor in sports management from Anna Maria College. And in her spare time, Brooke enjoys sports, the beach, and spending time with her family and pup Bergie. We need to see photos of Bergie. And Dale Jacobs. Dale is a career advisor with Southern New Hampshire University who works primarily with learners in the social sciences vertical. Dale has been working with SNHU since November of 2021. Prior to working with SNHU, Dale worked as an academic advisor with the University of Georgia, Go Dogs. He has a master's degree in higher education from Georgia Southern University and a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Georgia. For fun, Dale likes to go hiking around different parts of North Georgia and is a big Atlanta Braves baseball fan. So without further ado, I would like to turn over, I would imagine, the virtual mic to our speakers today, Dale Jacobs and Brooke Brigham.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that warm welcome and uh, speaking on behalf of Dale and myself. We're really excited to be here, and we are really thankful that you all could jump on for our presentation today on informational interviews. Um, so, what is an informational interview? Well, an informational interview is a brief meeting, phone call, or exchange of emails with a person who is working in a position or field that you would like to further explore or pursue. They are to be used as a learning opportunity rather than just a way to apply for a specific job or internship opening. And they also provide you the opportunity to learn in-depth details on the industry, organization, position, and then assess whether it's good fit for your own education, your skills, personality, and other career goals. You can also get a chance to observe or feel out the various work environments, connect with professionals who may have tips about how to find future employment or internship opportunities, improve your own skills in networking, and inquire about the field in general. And it was amazing too to see all of you putting your LinkedIn profile links in the chat already. As we start this informational interview session, that's a great way to get started with an informational interview. So, as we talk about how to identify those potential contacts, in addition to setting up informational interviews with individuals you already know, you can also schedule meetings with industry professionals you may not know personally. So, how do you identify these contacts? Well, LinkedIn, as we talked about, is a great resource that you can all use. Professional organizations, maybe your established personal networks, professional networks such as student clubs, career fairs you've been to, volunteer service organizations. Those are all great resources for identifying mutual connections with new contacts. And also in the chat, you can see Jason has just placed the link to our SNHU LinkedIn community, and that's a great place to start if you are not sure. So who is already in your network that you can reach out to? Maybe someone in your family, coaches, coworkers. You never know who can facilitate a life-changing professional connection, and your relevant network is actually much larger than you may think. So now we go into actually constructing an informational interview request. So what type of information should you include in this type of request? Well, you can see from the slide here, your name, first and last, how you found that person's contact information, a brief summary about you or your goals, maybe a little bit about your work history, the reason you're contacting them, which is just for more knowledge and information, and then your contact information. And just one note, if you're contacting that person by phone, make sure you leave a voicemail and be sure to say your name and your phone number slowly and clearly so that they can make note of it as well. Here is a sample script for requesting an informational interview. This sample script includes an introduction, that reason for reaching out that we discussed, key terms that show research and care into the organization, and of course, next steps. So if that person is available, when you would like to reach out, your contact information, things like that. And I'm actually going to read this informational interview script just in case you are multitasking. So, hello, my name is James Smith, and I am currently enrolled in the marketing program at Southern New Hampshire University. I came across your name while reviewing companies of interest on LinkedIn. I'm hoping to eventually begin my career in brand development. I am not currently seeking a job at this time. or even looking for an inside connection with your company. However, I am interested in learning more about your field of work and specifically your own experience and career path in branding with the consumer packaged goods industry. Would you be willing to connect and share how you broke into the field and your career experience with me? I am more than happy to work with your availability to meet at any location or via any method of connecting that works best for you and your schedule. Thank you in advance for your time, and I look forward to the prospects of connecting with you. So that was just a sample script for requesting an informational interview. You can, of course, design your own, or you can use something like this as a baseline for when you're adding your own research and experience in. So just to summarize this first section of this presentation, uh, the process of starting informational interviews, here are just some successful tips to hopefully get you going. Be flexible when arranging a time or date because we know everyone has a very busy schedule. Research the organization and thoughtfully prepare your questions. Make sure to dress professionally. Whether you are on Zoom or in person, avoid casual clothes. Arrive early, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Make sure you have a copy of your resume with you and something to take notes with. Remember, this meeting is not a time to inquire about job openings. And at the end of the interview, make sure you have all of that person's contact information so that you can reach out and you can even send them a thank you note after the interview so that you have time to follow up. And of course, everyone's time is very important to them. And then lastly, if you have not already done so, remember to connect with your interviewer on LinkedIn. So thank you all. With that being said, I'm going to now turn it over to Dale.
Awesome. Thanks, Brooke. I appreciate that a lot. And thankfully, I remembered to unmute before we started going. That was my one thing that I needed to remember. But yeah, there are a lot of great reasons as to why you should always be working to connect with your professional network, and informational interviews are a great way to do that. The value of an informational interview does not end with the interview itself. As Brooke mentioned, keeping in touch with your informational interviewee is a critical component of networking. Reaching out to your network on a regular basis, maybe every 3 to 6 months, can help you maintain key relationships that can accelerate your professional success. Only reaching out to someone when you need something is not the right way to build positive relationships. On the slide here, you can see a lot of great reasons as to why you should continue to build and connect with your network, including updating them on any certifications or degrees you might have received recently, updating theirs or your contact information, or just touching base to see how things have been going. Here are some potential topics that you can base your informational interview questions on. Over the next few slides, you'll see various examples of questions you can ask, but this is not an exhaustive list. Be sure to think about your questions in advance so you'll know how to proceed confidently and efficiently while also being mindful and respectful of your interviewee's time. Bringing a list of prepared questions with you is great, but also don't feel like you need to feel tied to it. Make sure you stay professional and always let the conversation flow organically. The next couple slides will include a lot of potential questions for you to ask your interviewee during your informational interview. At the end of each slide, I'll wait to transition to the next one so we all have a second to look over the questions together. Informational interviews can provide you with a great informal opportunity to ask someone who is where you want to be how they got there. You can see some great example questions here. It is important to remember that while some of these questions might be more personal, you should always make sure that your questions still relate to their career in some way. This is a good opportunity to ask what kind of work-life balance working in this industry might have. Another great question would be to ask what advice they would give their younger self, knowing what they know now. Remember to try to relax during the conversation. This is not a formal interview, but rather it's intended for you to learn as much as you can about this person, their industry, and their position that they're currently working in. I'll pause for a quick second as we look over these questions on the slides, and then I'll highlight one of my favorite ones. One question that I really like here is the last one. If this job or field were to become obsolete, what kind of other jobs could you apply your skills to? The purpose of this question is to highlight some of the transferable skills that this job will provide you with. And it can also help you identify some transferable skills that you might have in your current position that might be applicable to this one. During your informational interview, you'll have the opportunity to ask some more specific questions regarding the company that this person works at. When considering what questions you should ask, it's also important to be aware of the questions you should not ask during an informational interview. Now is not the time to ask the person you're interviewing with if they can get you a job within their company. Make sure you've done some research regarding the company so you can take real advantage of your time and questions with this person. You don't want to waste time asking questions that are easily accessible via Google or the company's website. You can see some great examples of the questions here on the slide, and I'll pause quickly one more time so we can all look at them together. And again, just to highlight one of the questions that I really like on this slide, I really like the one that kind of asks about internships or other jobs available within the company. This will help you identify some entry points into the company and what might be available to you with your current qualifications. While these slides have a lot of great suggestions for questions, the slides are definitely not exhaustive in the questions that you can ask, and feel free to create your own. It's important to remember to keep this conversational and allow the conversation to go where it needs to. By doing this, you might learn some things that you didn't even think to ask. One of my favorite questions on this slide is the last one referring to professional publications or associations. Answers to this question show how good informational interviewing can help you grow your professional network even further past the person you are talking with right now. I'll pause for a few more seconds so we can all read the questions on the slide. On this slide, you'll see a question regarding salary. It's important to remember that you should not ask the person you are interviewing with how much money they make. Other ways that you could address salary in this situation is to ask what a competitive salary range for someone in this position might be. As you are meeting with this person and asking them questions, you are more than welcome to bring a notebook with you to take notes on their answers if needed. Before the meeting, you could also write down some of the questions you are hoping to have answered so you don't forget them, and you can have them handy. I'll go ahead and pause one more time so we can all take a look at some of the questions on the slide, and then again, I'll highlight one of my favorites. So a question that I really like on this page is, does this position go by any other titles in other organizations? This will help you identify some other job titles that you should be searching for. While searching for jobs, make sure that you pay attention to the job description just as much as the job title. What one company calls one thing, another company might call something completely different while having relatively similar duties and qualifications. Another great thing that can come from doing an informational interview with someone is the ability to grow your professional network and find others that you can connect with. Maybe after connecting with your initial interviewee, you realize that while they work at a company you're interested in, they don't work in the specific area that you would want to. That doesn't mean that your first informational interview was a failure. However, it provided you with the ability to grow your perspective on the industry as a whole and the specific company. It also gives you an opportunity to ask this person if they do know anyone that they would recommend you talk to next to continue to grow your perspective. There are multiple ways in which you can phrase these questions on who to talk next, and you can see a couple quick examples on the slide. But yeah, that will conclude our presentation today on informational interviewing. On behalf of me, Brooke, Jason, I really appreciate you all making some time in your day. We reserved the rest of the time for the sessions for Q&A, and I've seen that there's a lot of great questions coming in and out of the chat. So yeah, we're excited to kind of dive into the Q&A portion. This is almost a good practice for informational interviewing in the future.
So thank you, Brooke and Dale. Fantastic content. We do have a lot of great questions, so I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning. This would be earlier in the discussion. Somebody asked, is there a preferred method of contact? Like, what would you recommend when reaching out to somebody for an info interview?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of it just depends on the relationship that you might have with the person that you are asking to interview. So if it's someone that you've never met before, if you're not familiar with their work schedule, kind of like Brooke mentioned in her presentation, I think LinkedIn is a perfect medium for kind of reaching out to someone. A lot of people can be nervous about reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, afraid to bother them. But that's like I said, that's the medium that LinkedIn is for. It's not like you're on Facebook commenting on their son or daughter's graduation photos asking for something, like on LinkedIn, it's focused on professional development. So if it's someone that you're unfamiliar with, an email if you can find one, or LinkedIn is great. If it's someone you're close with, whether it's a family member or if it's a friend who's in an industry that you're in, I mean, obviously, hopefully you can call them or text them. A lot of it just depends on the relationship that you might have with the person. I don't know if you have anything to add, Brooke.
No, I think that you summarized that really well, Dale. I would agree. I think LinkedIn is a great place to start and get to know your contacts. You can also check out their LinkedIn profile. Some folks have their email listed there. So you could always try the LinkedIn first. And if you don't hear anything, then I would follow up through email. Maybe give it a week just to make sure that they've seen your LinkedIn post, and you don't want to pester anyone as well if they're not interested in an informational interview. But I agree what Dale said. I think that was a great answer.
And just to kind of finish up off what Brooke said, definitely don't be discouraged if you don't hear back from the first person that you reach out to ask for an informational interview. As we've all experienced during the job search process, sometimes you're going to hear no from employers, sometimes you're going to hear nothing. But also, it's important to continue to put yourself out there and not be discouraged if the first person that you reach out to isn't necessarily as receptive as you might be.
And don't open with a dad joke in your first email. Just a word of advice. We have another question. This one is kind of interesting. So a few people have alluded to something like this. So is it normal to do an info interview if you're not a salesperson or in sales? Like, do info interviews benefit? Who do they benefit? So great question.
I can take this one to start. I did see this question come through the chat, and I thought it was a great one. So informational interviews are meant for anyone in any field. And I almost like to think of informational interviews as a way to start or take a little bit of control over your networking. So if you are on LinkedIn or you are at a career fair or you're just at Thanksgiving and you're talking about your career aspirations or your career goals, and you see someone or talk to someone that is also interested, or maybe in a position that you would like to be in, or in the field that you would like to be in. It's just a time when you can uh, sit down with them, whether it's in person or over something virtual like this, and just get to know them, get to know their field, get to know how they got in the position that they're in. And then it's another stepping stone for you. So if you talk to your informational interviewer for 20 minutes, you might want to close your informational interview with, "This conversation has been amazing. Who else can I talk to in the field? Or is there anyone else that I can talk to about this specific topic that you could suggest?" And so it really the informational interview is a way, no matter what field or program that you're in, it's a stepping stone for you, and it's a way to build your professional network. And Dale, I'm not sure if you have anything else to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of that stuff that Brooke mentioned is great. I think one of the great things about informational interviewing is that there's a lot of different ways you can go about it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be called a formal informational interview when you reach out to the person. Just as kind of like an anecdotal evidence on how I'm here today is kind of through informational interviewing. So my first job after I got out of college was as a administrative assistant in a college's housing department. And that was just kind of a job that I was applying for to have a steady job with benefits. I didn't really know what a housing department or higher education or student affairs really did. But in that position, I got close to some of my colleagues and was able to ask a lot of questions about what they did, be able to kind of see what they did, and have some kind of informal informational interviewing that way. And that kind of helped me realize that, like I mentioned in my presentation, that there's a lot of things that you don't even know about until you ask or experience it. And without those experiences, I wouldn't have realized that working in higher ed would eventually become my career. So, like we talked about in our presentation, there's definitely some wrong ways to go about informational interviewing, but there's a lot more right ways to go about it as well. So definitely don't feel like, well, I hope that our presentation today was helpful to kind of introduce you to the concept. Definitely don't feel like you need to conform to the list of questions that we listed. I mean, the template that Brooke shared is fantastic, but if you want to personalize it in your own way, you can also do that too. There's a lot of different ways that you can kind of go about doing this.
And like most things in life, there are a right way, there's a right way, and there's a wrong way. So informational interviews, as Brooke and Dale have shared, it's for information. Like you're asking someone about a job or a company or an industry that you're interested in. So actually, you're the one driving the interview. And we had a couple people ask, is it okay to ask for a job shadow or to talk about jobs? And what do you both think of that? Is that, again, if you're reaching out for a certain purpose of information, do you bring that up, I guess, or how do you do that?
Yeah, for me, I think a lot of it just, again, I know this is kind of something that I mentioned a couple of times, just depends on your relationship with the person. So if you just kind of think about it from your perspective, let's say that someone comes to you and asks you about your current job and you have no idea who they are, you don't know their qualifications or anything like that. And within the first 10 minutes of you meeting with them, they ask you for a job. I have to imagine that's probably not going to come off the best way because you don't know this person, you don't trust them, you're not sure if you want to let them into your workplace. So through your informational interview, you can kind of like show potential employers, potential job shadowing people, your qualifications, kind of just build that relationship. And you might eventually end up getting what you want without explicitly asking for it, if that kind of makes sense. And I'll pass it to Brooke if you have anything to kind of add on to that.
I would just add that make sure that you do your research ahead of time. So if you are interested in having an interview with so-and-so at ABC company, just make sure that you've researched ABC company. I mean, it doesn't hurt to look to see if they have internships and job openings, but just make sure that you're taking a look at their mission, their values. You've done your research on maybe the person that you will be in the informational interview with. Maybe they have a bio on the company website. Just make sure that you do your homework because as Dale said and Jason said too, you don't want to step into that informational interview, that networking platform, and just ask for a job or ask for an internship. Their time is really important to them. And the informational interview should be looked at as a conversation towards your networking goals instead of it may end in a job or an internship opportunity. And that's on the very positive end, but it's just a chance to get to know more contacts in the field and learn more about that field.
Great response. We also got another question just about, in general, if a person's not on LinkedIn, which, believe it or not, there are many people not on LinkedIn. How does one go about getting contact information for people at a company that you want to, learn more about? So how do you? Any tips about how to find emails, contact info for our learners today?
Yeah, I think like Brooke mentioned earlier, company websites, I mean, a lot of them nowadays, especially if you're applying to a larger company, have directories that you can kind of go through. A lot of job applications will have a contact listed with an email that you could reach out to kind of follow up with. I can kind of speak from my own experience. Before kind of coming into this position, I didn't necessarily embrace LinkedIn that much. I'm not a big social media person. I'm an introvert, but I have since I've come into this position, I've been able to see the great avenues that LinkedIn has been able to provide for me, as well as the learners I've interacted with. So just as a quick plug, if LinkedIn is something that you are nervous about starting, a little hesitant about, I would definitely encourage you to reach out to your career advisor with SNHU and kind of have that conversation about the pros and cons with it. And I know that your career advisor would be more than happy to kind of help you set up your LinkedIn and kind of help guide you through that process to maybe make you feel a little bit more comfortable and less hesitant about it. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Brooke mentioned a lot of great stuff about company websites and stuff like that. Brooke, do you have anything else?
No, I think that has hit the nail on the head, so to speak. I think that definitely get yourself on LinkedIn if you haven't checked it out yet. But I can't stress enough doing your research to make sure that you're prepared to step into those 15, 20 minutes that someone has set aside to meet with you, and to make sure, again, I can't stress enough that you are thankful after those 20 minutes or that informational interview has passed. So please make sure to send a thank you note, whether it's something that you hand to them as soon as you walk out the door, maybe jot a couple notes down and give it to their administrative assistant, or you send them a great email with something that you learned from meeting with them that day.
Excellent points again. I think we're getting some more great responses and questions in the chat. Folks are kind of talking about, I guess, if you don't know people and maybe you are a little anxious with LinkedIn and just reaching out to folks you don't know. One person asked, like, there's no mutual connection. I'm still kind of shy. Like, should I just go for it and quit second guessing myself, or what do you recommend? And Brooke, like, what do you think?
Oh, this is a great question. So I would say go for it, because my philosophy, and this is just me, but I always feel the worst that someone can say is no, or just not respond. And then you'll just move on to the next person that you can connect with. But I would also say that if you feel shy about whatever networking steps you would like to take, then I would start with your family or your friends. Start with those people that you do feel comfortable with, and you never know who your friends and family also know. And just building those little stepping stones, those building blocks, can be really helpful. And I know that I'm not the most outgoing person when it comes to talking to new people or getting to know new people. And sometimes going to these networking events or career fairs can be a little bit stressful. But it's great to at least try to surround yourselves at first with those people that you already know, and practice and practice and practice, and you can gain more confidence in that way too.
Yeah, I think that's great. One thing that's been really helpful for me, and like I mentioned earlier, is I'm a pretty introverted person. So the thought of kind of reaching out to someone that I really have no idea or never met before is definitely something that could be intimidating. But something that's been helpful for me is to kind of give myself kind of checkpoints or goals to follow up on. So like my goal for this week might be to reach out to 5 people on LinkedIn. And once I get to my 5, that's a checkpoint to kind of see that I've accomplished something this week. Like my goal is to reach out to them. My goal isn't successful or unsuccessful based on if they reach back out to me. So kind of giving yourself those checkpoints to kind of see the progress that you've made and kind of help make yourself go outside your comfort zone slowly is something that's been really helpful for me to do.
And I just want to emphasize 2 things. One, please reach out to your career advisor. So a lot of folks are asking specific questions about details of the informational interview process and how to set it up, or you might need some coaching, or maybe you don't feel so confident. So please reach out to your career advisor. I believe I'm going to put it back in the chat. I posted the information on how to reach out to the online career center, the campus career center, emails and phone numbers. So please make use of that information. The other thing I want to stress is, and Brooke addressed this, and so did Dale, go for it. Like, you have nothing to lose. If they don't respond to you, the sun comes up the next day, life goes on. It's not a big deal. I've worked with lots of students who send about 10 requests on LinkedIn a week, and maybe 2 or 3 people get back to them. So all you really care about are those 2 or 3 people. And then you follow them up and you have a great conversation, you build your relationships that way. It's not about one at a time, because it could take a long time. But if they're on LinkedIn, and all of us are, please reach out. Like, that's what we're there for. You're there to see and be seen. And I've never turned down an info interview request. I think most people are just happy to, as Brooke said, talk about themselves and share about their experiences. There are, I'm just going through some more questions here. Yeah, more people are just coming in. Yes, so one person asked, so utilize your mutual connections to connect more. So is that I guess one strategy? Yeah, Brooke or Dale?
Yes, I would say that starting with your family, your friends, or people you know, or your coworkers, even those who are on this chat with you, if you decide to connect on LinkedIn and your own peers in your courses, those are great places to start. So definitely utilize those mutual connections. And then, as Jason just said, don't be nervous to branch out with someone who is in your professional field or has a title or a position that you would someday like to achieve. Because as I said, you can always follow up and say, thank you so much for your time today. Who else can I speak with in the field?
And I think another great resource to lean on is your instructors in your program as well. I mean, they're experts in their field. They have worked in that field. They have experience teaching people in that field. So never be afraid to email your instructor with any of these questions on how maybe they broke into the industry that you're trying to get into as well. Sometimes I feel like students can forget about their faculty, but they're great resources, and their job is to kind of help you out and support you. So definitely don't forget about them as well.
Well, that is a perfect segue into a question asked by one of our learners. Would it be appropriate to add former professors to our LinkedIn network?
Yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome to send out the request. Obviously, it's up to the instructor's discretion if they want to add you. But I know for me personally, I've been able to connect with a lot of learners that I've interacted with over my time at SNHU, and it's been great to kind of see their developments and to kind of see themselves grow as they've kind of finished up their degree and moved on to different things. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to do that.
And just to add to that, great question in the chat about the professors. But we did place in the chat a link to the SNHU community. So if you're not sure where to start with connecting with your peers or professors or so on, that SNHU LinkedIn community can be a great place to start. So just wanted to throw that out there as well. I'll try to find it and repost it in the chat.
Yeah, and another thing to remember, as I know we're kind of talking about LinkedIn a lot, but when you send someone a request on LinkedIn, you can include a little message to kind of introduce yourself. So if you're adding your instructor probably has a lot of students that they work with. So you could always include a little message saying, hey, my name's Dale. I'm in your communication skills class. I'd love to connect and learn more about the field, just so they kind of know where you're coming from and know that you're a real person and not a spam account. Like Brooke said, the LinkedIn SNHU community is a great way to connect. When I joined the SNHU community, I got like 5 requests in the next day from SNHU people, which is great. It's great to see different people around the university and what they're doing.
Always best to be a real person. Yes, never fake it. Oh, interesting. So a learner commented on another community, Discord. SNHU Discord, which is, again, a fantastic community used by a lot of learners. Great point. Other questions? I think we've covered everything in the chat related to informational interviewing and the related content. Again, for folks who have specific questions about specific parts of this process or something to do with their job or internship search or any career matter, please make an appointment with your career advisor. So I'm going to move us ahead. There we go. So I know that this is one of the later afternoon programs, but we still, believe it or not, the goodness keeps coming. There are still more programs coming later tonight for Career Day. And also, please check out Handshake for additional future career events. I should also say that as we kind of wrap up, please check out a few other sessions, and don't forget to fill out the survey that we will email to you after the event to let us know how we did. As a reminder, these sessions are recorded, and they'll be available on the SNHU Career Services YouTube channel in a few business days once the event is done. All right.
Thank you all so much for your time today and for attending our informational interview session. You can always check out, as Dale put in the chat earlier, the contact information for career and of course that LinkedIn community. But thank you all so much, and we can't wait to see you at the sessions that are coming up.
Yeah, thanks again, everyone. And like Brooke mentioned, definitely don't be afraid to reach out to your career advisor. We're here to advocate and support for you all in any way that we can. So thanks for your time. I hope that y'all enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the sessions.
Awesome.